What's going down, ladies and gentlemen? Man, sorry it took me so long to get this thing going, but we are here. Like I said, sorry, about 15 minutes late. Sorry about that. Um, Let me get my stuff together. All right, so yes, hello, Fearless Cummings here. I think Brian's on his way. So today we're going to be talking about the power of reading and why expanding your knowledge is actually a rebellion. And I think that looking at the last few incidences that has happened within this week, um, I think that putting down your phone's a little bit. Sorry, I'm a bit under the weather. My voice is kind of all over the place, but please bear with me. I think that right now, if we to ever talk about reading or why reading is more important, today is that time. So we're gonna go ahead and roll our thing and get started. Guys, hold on, let me find it. What's going on, Brian? How you doing, sir?
I don't think my can you hear my mic now? Man, I've been fighting StreamYard for 20 minutes. It wouldn't
Oh
let
wow.
it wouldn't let me in. I could see like what you were doing, but it kept crashing
Mhm.
and then whatever. I don't know what's going on with it today.
He said
But
it kept crashing.
well, it was like not letting me in for whatever reason. So it was sitting there
Like
thinking,
into StreamYard or
yeah,
into our studio.
both at first it was into StreamYard, then it was into the studio, and then it wouldn't recognize my camera. It's been a mess. So
Oh wow.
what
Okay.
what we on today, bro?
Today we are here. I'll put it in the our notes. The power of reading and why expanding your knowledge is a rebellion.
Okay.
And here's the thing. The reason why I wanted to kind of go with this one today, uh, in a lot of cases, it's because hold on one second. You got your pivoting thing. Let me take that off and create a new thing for it. Give me a minute. Because of all the stuff that's kind of going on right now, I feel like I personally think that a lot. I think that when you don't read anything, when if your only source of information comes from somebody else, you're a slave to whatever they tell you.
Yeah.
So whatever facts, if they got 5 facts and they say no, it's a fact, go look it up. Perfect. Stop talking and go look that up. Because I can almost assure you, for the most part, that whatever that person is telling you, not all the time, but a lot of times, it's a barefaced lie, and they know it is. That's why they said, "Oh no, it's a fact. Go look it up." And that's the reason why I don't want to argue with anybody. My whole thing is let's go look it up.
Right.
So if you sit and you tell me that this particular group is marginalizing another, cool, let's go look that up. How? Let's be specific. Kind of like going through the same rigmarole that you were talking about before with because you were a journalist major,
Yeah.
and what did we discuss before? Understanding what are we talking about, number one. Where did you get this information at, number two? How credible is the information? And can I find that same information based on what you talked about? And if you look at science experiments, for instance, a science experiment is based on If you gave me the same information, can I come up with the same? Can I come up with the same exact answer that you came up with? If you came up with a different answer than I did, then your experiment's flawed
Right.
by definition. If you tell me something, I should be able to go check that right now in real time and know whether or not you're actually being legitimate or not.
Uh,
Like off top. And so um I need to send this over to you so you can kind of go understand what I'm talking about. Sorry everybody, my voice I'm getting over a hell of a cold. My voice is already soft and whatever, but it's kind of going up and down or whatever. But please bear with me. Go ahead, though, Bryon.
so there's a couple of things. I think we've kind of entered this world or this stage of where everything is up for interpretation, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
No.
But we can't have a universal standard of reality. And we talked about this before, where I said, a lot of times people will uh, immerse themselves in theory and stuff like that, and there's no moral anchor. Like they don't anchor themselves to anything, any ethical or moral framework with it, and so they're just willing to believe anything about anybody, regardless of how crazy it is, if it aligns or if it solves gaps in their knowledge.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
and
Yep.
so we're entering that stage. Plus, I do think there was something insidious about the entire rollout of the No Child Left Behind stuff, because I'm a marketer, and so I know that most adults in the country at this at this stage and point, half of the population is at a sixth grade reading level or below.
Or
Um,
below.
and it's not just being able to see words, and I think people mistake that all the time. Reading comprehension is about being able to understand what you've actually read and apply your specific framework and reference of life to what's being said, so you can put it in context, if you will. And
Mm.
I think that we're kind of seeing what happens when we have access to unlimited information 24 hours a day at our fingertips and not a lot of ability to comprehend what's being said.
Mm.
And,
Correct.
and so what you're dealing with is, even as a journalism major, there's so much white noise out there, and we talked about it last week. But there's so much white noise out there that is overwhelming people's ability, their limited ability to comprehend what's being read to them in the first place. And so they instead of reading information for themselves, they defer to people that they trust. But the reason why they trust them is because they like them. It's not because they trust them because this person has told me factual stuff before. It's, I like this person, I like this individual, and because I align with this person in a political way or or ideological way, because I align with them, I like them, and because I like them, they're telling me the truth, and it becomes a snake eating its own tail. And so, the act of reading, being able, not even just, yes, literature, books, fiction, nonfiction, but newspapers, articles, research papers. Like, there's so much stuff that you can actually inform yourself and give yourself informed positions on or with. There's AI tools that will take written language and turn it into a podcast for you to listen to, like Google LM. There's so much access to gain quality information that people still want to go for the junk food information. And I think that does come from the literacy level sinking in this country. And
Mm.
a lot of it has to do with how, um this is theory crafting on my part, so stay with me. I think a lot of it has to do with how we even approach the classroom after No Child Left Behind, where teachers are literally teaching the test so that they can secure funds for next year. And
Yeah.
so they've eliminated, like, literally, you look at some of the curriculum and stuff, teachers actually get in trouble for teaching critical thinking. They get in trouble for teaching um rational concepts, or um interpretive, encouraging their students to interpret things, and read context clues. A lot of that stuff they get punished for because it's not tested for. They can't test for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have an entire generation of now adults who got teachers that never challenged them. I had teachers that challenged me. I mean, that's the crazy part. Like, as much shade as we throw at the education apparatus that exists, I grew up with teachers that actually challenged me and challenged my thinking on things and challenged the class to think critically about history and even applications of math, politics, all that stuff. And now we have teachers who would love to be able to do that, but just can't because they get in trouble because it's not teaching the test.
And hold on, let's be descriptive. What do we mean by trouble? Because I don't just like you're gonna get in trouble. No. What do we mean by get in trouble?
Like written up, like negative performance reviews, like things that impact
which leads to what?
Which leads to you're not getting paid. You're not getting your raises. Could lead to you getting fired. It could lead to you.
There you go.
It could lead. It could prevent you from moving up into administration and advancing your career in the academic field. And so, I think we're seeing the residual impact of the wave of anti-intellectualism that's kind of sweeping the country or whatnot. But I think it did start with the No Child Left Behind thing, and I think that when you because here's the thing. A lot of people think that you are being a rebel by reading a poorly cited article that says the opposite of what everybody else believes. That's not rebellious in and of itself. Just believing the opposite of what everybody else believes that's not rebellious, or that doesn't take any intellect. That's just being a contrarian. I'm saying being able to process information and say, okay, this thing that they're saying doesn't align with what these people who know more about it are saying. Or, okay, yeah, they're right. I guess they're right based on the preponderance of evidence. We don't have a lot of people don't have that ability right now. It's really frustrating to experience that even in an online space where I'm tap dancing around the issue because I'm probably going to end up talking about it tonight. But I encountered I ran into a couple of buzzsaws last week with that. With all the other stuff that's going on in this country and interacting with people online, I think as a country, we're seeing what happens when you scrub people's ability to critically think about things. And critically think, again, doesn't mean just taking the opposite stance.
Mm-hmm.
That's being an asshole. And some people like to be assholes online because that's their persona. It's being an asshole. There's entire political movements now, which you're going to find out about later if you watch me, that literally exist to be destructive assholes. Like that's their political stance is. My stance is nihilism. Like the punchline is nihilism. Mm-hmm. That's the punchline. There's no point, and so we might as well enjoy the theater of everything burning down. We see a lot of that online, and people are saying these are intellectuals, and that's not really what it is. So I'm saying all that to say this. One of the things that has us cooked as a country is the fact that people don't read independently anymore, or they only consume media or information from people that they like. And it's a likability standpoint. I know a lot of journalists that would love to be able to do hard-hitting investigative journalism that will absolutely get them fired. They would absolutely get them fired. They want to ask the penetrating questions of these figures around the state, but they would absolutely get them in trouble. So they can't because they got to make a living. That's the state we're in. That's where we're at right now. So,
I just sent you the top 10 reasons to expand your knowledge. Did you get that? I sent it in your email.
Oh, email. Okay, I'll sit there looking in the show notes.
Yeah, nope. You can put it in the show notes if you want to. just so people can kind of follow along or whatever. But um, so here's the thing. As a life coach, one of the things that I tell people is that there's nothing wrong with with glorifying. There's nothing wrong with talking about other people's achievements. So I want to say good job to Bud Crawford. Do we have my let me see if I got my do I have any claps? Do I have any? I don't think we have any on here.
I think I might have them in my studio. Hold on a second.
Okay.
I'm trying to pull up. I'm trying
I
to pull up.
had some in mind. Oh, here it is.
Trying to pull up my email without my stuff crashing on.
Did you hear that?
Yep.
Good job, Mr. Crawford. Great job. Here's the thing. I tell people this all the time. There's absolutely nothing wrong with looking at another man's goals, looking at another man's achievements, and becoming inspired by them. But what I hope happens is that you take this and let it inspire you to go after your own dreams, goals, and aspirations.
Yep.
Because what happens is that we live vicariously through everybody else except for our own. So it's good to buy all Bud's merch. It's good to watch everything that he got going on. It's good to applaud the man for his achievements in general. But you guys got to remember, this didn't just happen yesterday or on Saturday. He'd been working towards that for decades. You see what I'm saying? Decades. And the fact that so many people think that I remember growing up and people like, man, I'm moving out on Omaha. There ain't nothing here. And I used to always say, no, there's not. You're not doing anything. It's not that there's not anything here. It's that you're not doing anything that would bring a person here for. But became champion, stayed home. Defended his title, stayed home. Brought stars and all kinds of people to Omaha.
Yeah.
Went out. I mean, like he is the voice of Omaha, and I love that. But this is an opening for us to jump in with whatever you got going. Ride his coattails with a product or a service that you bring to the table. So, what is it that we're bringing that, oh, okay, I see Omaha's more than just fighters. Omaha's a bunch of intellectuals. Omaha's a bunch of this. Omaha's a bunch of that. That's what I want to see more of.
Well, and here's the thing, because we're talking about, we're on that, I was kind of on the anti-intellectual thing, and that's one of the things I've been arguing with people online about. They don't appreciate that Bud brought an intellectual spin to boxing in the way that he, like, they don't, I grew up watching boxing, right? And so this art of not getting hit, like that's the other side of it. Like, and a lot of people, when I've talked to people and I've said it, if people follow me on Facebook can see I've even said it, you realize that a lot of people will watch these things and not know what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And so people were critical because it wasn't like a Rocky movie, like where they're just standing flat-footed punching each other in the face. And it's like, no, that's not what the game plan was. And Bud brings a different cerebral approach to the sport. You could tell that he watches videos. You could tell that he studies his opponent. He gets what their tendencies are, and is playing a chess match while he's in the ring with someone to neutralize what they do well.
Yeah.
And people were mad about it. And it was really interesting and telling on social media. It's like you could tell who actually is a fan of the cerebral side of the sport and who just wants to see people bleed. It's the same thing when MMA took off. There's always that subject. There's always that population. I think might be even a larger population of people that really just want to see people just bashing people's faces in, and they don't want to see the physical chess match that's actually taking place between two combat veterans. They don't want to see it because in their mind they can't, since they don't recognize the high level stuff that's happening. they're bored by it.
Hmm.
They just want to see the brutality of it without understanding the philosophy, the psychology or the discipline behind it. Um, which is kind of a microcosm of the what we're living in right now, and like the existence we are. That's why we're doing that's why we're doing this episode specifically, because if you know what you're looking at, you know what you're looking at. I appreciated that fight as a fan of not only Bud, but just the sport of boxing, because I grew up watching it. And yeah, I love the Hagler Hearns. We stand flat footed and trade
Oh
punches.
yeah, yeah, that was beautiful.
I love watching that, but I also love watching people execute it at a higher level.
Hmm.
And it always used to be that way. Like,
And watching him walk around so frustrated,
yeah,
he was pissed. Dude, I saw probably 4 or 5 times where Canelo walked off like during the fight. I was like, dude,
yeah.
like he was obviously frustrated because he couldn't do nothing with him.
Well, there's boxing teachers out there and boxing nerds out there that do breakdowns of Bud's film and stuff, and they're talking about here's stuff that he does that nobody else does, or you guys do not have any understanding of how hard what he just did is in space, hitting another person who can move and who's a trained fighter.
Right.
And I love those kind of analytical breakdowns of the sport, because I love the science of it. I love the 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 execution of it, because it's art watching it, and you're watching an artist work. And so, like I said, I encountered so many people that, and it's not a knock on them. I guess I don't want to make it seem like I'm just picking on them, but it is it's telling. Like, some people watch boxing just to see people get their heads cracked open, and other people actually enjoy the actual the sport and the the game within the game that's
Mhm.
happening. So it's just interesting. It's just an
Yeah,
interesting
I
thing.
loved it. I thought it was good. I mean, again, as a life coach, please, people, take what you saw there and let it inspire you to follow your thing.
Yeah.
Again, sorry about my voice, but let it inspire you. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying. Like he brought something beautiful to, I mean, whatever. I mean, but how many of us have something that we bring to the table and that you're not showing anybody? That's all I'm saying. Come on now. All right, so let's kind of jump into our thing. So I'll take the first couple, and then you can take the next couple and go from there.
Okay.
So number one, uh, reading is mental reps for the brain, right? So example would be just like going to the gym, how a gym builds muscles. Books build that mental discipline. So here's the question: how often do you train your mind versus your body? Whenever you're talking to people and you're having that conversation, the more you read, it allows you to expand on that in- internal dialogue and
Hmm.
that external dialogue. So the brain needs reps to grow, and reading gives your mind those reps, especially if you read daily, because your mind is automatically looking for something to feed on. If you think about it, our brains take on 20%. I think 20% of the oxygen, I believe, go to our brains. Like I
Right.
believe so. It's a large percentage that goes straight there
Right.
to the whole body. Majority of that oxygen goes to the head, so it needs that room. It needs that food to breathe. Number two, knowledge shrinks your excuses. So the example would be, I don't know becomes I haven't read that yet, or I haven't figured it out yet. And that's all trial and error is about. Trial and error is about, I don't know what's going to work until I do it.
Right.
I don't know how this is going to look until I market it. I don't know how many people are going to buy this until I show it to them. That's what trial and error is. But it's all based on your knowledge and your lack of excuses. So the question that we would ask is, are your excuses rooted in ignorance or avoidance?
Mhm.
And I think that if you look at what's going on today, you can kind of see that. You can kind of see that with the rhetoric going on right now. Where's your excuses for you not knowing something rooted in? Is it rooted in arrogance, ignorance, or avoidance? Right? So
Right.
the reality is, the more you read, the fewer excuses make sense. Because you're gonna look at that, or you're gonna listen to that, and you're gonna say, yeah, that doesn't sound right. Let me go look that up.
Right.
And then you can look it up and you can say, oh, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. Like there's this thing I want to show you right quick, bro.
Okay.
And I'm gonna pull it up. Then I thought it was I thought it was so amazing. I liked I liked the word so much. I was looking at the word and I was like, wow, this is crazy. But it was funny because people would say all the time that Mr. Kirk, all he was doing was what did they say? They would say that. Sorry, my voice again. They would say that all he was doing was giving his opinion. He didn't hurt anybody. Can you see? Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Okay. Psychotic. Yeah. Psychotic terrorism.
Yeah, it's a form of political violence instigated by hostile public rhetoric directed at a certain group or an individual. Unlike incitement to terrorism, what is that word? How do you say it?
Where?
I call it stochastic.
Yeah.
I don't-
Sarcastic terrorism.
Okay, stochastic terrorism is accomplished with indirect,
Stochastic.
vague, vague or coded language, which grants the instigator plausible deniability for any associated violence. So let me give you guys an example of this. Let me give you an example.
And while you're
Watch,
pulling, oh yeah,
watch this. Hold on. What is it? Watch this. Hey, how do you spell insurrection?
you're no, it's with an I. You're asking
It's
the
with the
wrong person.
I.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, me too, right? I'm horrible. Okay, so this right here, ladies and gentlemen, this right here. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
This right here is what uh what was that word again?
Sarcastic.
Stochastic
Yeah.
terrorism is. That's what this is. So all this shit right here, and then our president was like, I didn't do anything. I didn't tell them to go do that. That's what that is. So when people said that Charlie Kirk didn't do anything, that's what I'm like, no. Actually, yes, he did. Yes, he did. And then it's like, well, he didn't have access to government. When you have the president of the United States lowering his flags, half staff, yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Well, and
So so when people sit there and say that, and again, I know this word because I love to fucking read. So I know what you're doing, even when you're not going to use that word, but I will because I know what you're doing.
So, and for a little bit of a context, on my end at least, my magnum opus before I shut down, before I stopped writing for Long Boxing While Black, because I was initially trying to go the independent journalism route, right? And so I was following specific groups that had ties to right wing fringe right wing movements, and Turning Point was one of the major groups that I was actually like. When I say studying it, when people say do the research or I research this, there's a difference between looking up articles online and actually looking up articles and citing things and cross-checking and doing references. I was doing the research on that one because that was going to be like my magnum opus, pivoting that the comic book website, the political comic book website, into like actual journalism. And so I'm really, really, and I'm not saying this to gas myself up. I'm really, really well versed on a lot of Turning Point, specifically, a lot of Kirk's stuff. And so I'm saying all that to say this. You don't need this level of what my level of having mainlined a lot of the stuff that he was doing to know that there's an element of I can't even say the word stochastic terrorism that's at play here. And I think a lot of times people will tell you that in this idealized world, words don't lead to violence, right? But you could talk to anybody that grew up in a place where violence happened, street violence happened. Or and you it doesn't even have, you don't even have to be the you don't even have to be from the hood to understand this, because there's plenty of places where violence is in the air, right? Or it's you grow up in a situation where you have family members that get arrested for DV and stuff like that. Like you have intimate experiences with it from a young age. Everybody that has experienced real random acts of violence or lived in a place where random acts of violence do occur occasionally know that words lead to violence, and words can lead to violence really fast. It shouldn't. It shouldn't. That should not happen. But in the real world, it does. You know? And so I think a lot of people live in an online world where you could say whatever to whoever, however you want to, and they're never going to take your words. They're never going to do anything with it, or they're never going to bring the drama to you, or they're never going to take your words as an impetus to go do something to somebody else. I know for a fact that it's not hard to get people who are looking to get wound up.
Hmm.
And so words do lead to violence. And that's kind of the stochastic terror. Because a lot of times when people are like, well, words are just words. Well, that's easy if you don't believe in the cause of stochastic terrorism, which it is. I mean, like that's really what it is. It's inciting words. It's words that incite things. There's reasons why there are laws about fighting words now, because fighting words are words that incite people to violence. And so you can you can legally get in trouble for fighting words.
Yeah.
And it can also
be or inciting a riot.
Yeah.
Not based on what you did,
but
based on what you said.
Yeah. And it could also be a defense for you. Like, he made it, he or she made it sound like they were going to do something physically to me, so I defended myself.
Yeah.
And they said fighting words.
Actually, it's called assault.
Yeah.
Because it's with the intent.
Yeah.
That's what you plan to do.
Right. And so, I kind of took your point and ran with it. But yeah, the idea is that stochastic terror is a real thing. And people want to pretend like it's not. I've experienced it. The reason why I literally stopped writing, I stopped writing for my website because of death threats and people threatening to dox my kids and dox my wife. Pictures of my house in my inbox. Stuff like that. If it was just me, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I've told people, here's my work address. You can come talk to me if we have an issue in the inbox. Told people that. I'm here from this time to this time. But when it comes to now you're going to mess with my wife or my kids, then I got to sit back and like, all right, so where are we going with this thing? That's why I stopped writing that stuff. It needs to be written, but it's like, am I willing to put people I care about at risk for this thing? And I wasn't really willing to do. I'm not ready to do that now. But I'm also a little bit older now. And I realize there are certain things that can be said, that need to be said and should be said. And there are other things that all it takes is one crazy person to latch on to. So I stopped writing. Like, dude, I stopped writing because of that. I stopped writing because of that. Racist death threats on my website. That's why I stopped.
So what were you writing about that would cause such a calamity for that?
I was writing about black characters in comic books, bro.
And that's why you stopped?
No, that's why I got the death threats, bro.
I'm saying that's why you stopped.
I stopped because people were like, they're threatening, tell me where my kids went to school, telling me where my wife worked, because they didn't agree with me talking about black life in comic books, how black characters interacted with one another. Like, it was the most bizarre thing and the most unhinged thing. And I'm like, when I was in the process of researching this article and putting all this stuff together, because I was about to jump in with both feet, and I'm like, if people are bugging out like this behind something benign as comic books reflecting what's going on in Black America, which I thought was a pretty neutral point. What's going to happen when I actually do get political?
Hmm.
And then I in quick succession, I started getting all those death threats. My mom got sick, and then she passed, and I had to deal with my whole grief journey afterwards, and it shut down everything. And so I just, I'm just now circling back to a point where I'm willing to open myself up for that again. But when I'm looking at people willing to crash out, like literally threatening all kinds of crazy shit because they disagree with me about black characters in comic books, and because my challenge was, okay, so how do we make comic books reflect the totality of black life in America? Because right now, it doesn't necessarily feel that way, especially when you have so many black characters. We have so many black characters that are front and center in comic books, but in some cases, they're not being written by black folks, and they don't really feel like they're connected. Like, there's no other. This is the article. This is kind of the thing that got me in trouble, because I was asking, what do comic books look like in the world with Black Lives Matter and stuff like that? So my question was, my contention was, I want to see what the black community, like, you have a bunch of black characters in Marvel, right?
Okay.
What black barbershop do they go to? Where do they do things that black people normally do? They all live in the same city. They don't talk or hang out and stuff. And I found it interesting because there was a comic book, I forgot who wrote it, Red, White, and Black. It was basically taking they're taking the real life thing that happened with the Tuskegee experiment and applying it to a framework of Captain America, saying that there were a couple of black Captain Americas who were tested on by the US government, and it documents their stories. And there was one that was there was a part in there that was really interesting because it kind of crossed over with, I'm all over the place, y'all, but it crossed over with Storm and Black Panther's wedding, right? And so one of the elements that they put in there was all the black heroes were fully aware of who the black Captain America was, and they all revered and idolized him. And then the white characters who were at the wedding didn't have any clue who he was, because he is a hero to the black population of heroes. And so that got me thinking, what does the black community look like in some of these universes? And so that's what the article was about. That was the last one. That was kind of the last one I wrote. It had been building to that point. with
Hmm.
people talking to me crazy, inboxing me crazy things, inboxing me pictures of my house, my kids' school, and all the other stuff. But that was kind of the one where people kind of lost their minds, and it really lost their minds just because the title had Black Lives Matter in it.
So
What I'm saying is I experienced it, and it was weird to experience it for something that I thought was just kind of a benign thing, but apparently it touched a nerve.
that's crazy.
I mean, getting death threats over comic books, bro. Like, really. And not just, haha, Bryon, I'm gonna kill you kind of stuff. Like, this is your house right now. What? Say what? Are you serious right now? You know? So again, I backed off of that. I completely backed off of writing, talking about it on writing or trying to talk about it in public spaces or online forums and stuff like that. Like, I completely backed off.
Okay.
Stochastic, that's the point of what stochastic terror. I can't even say it. Fearless. Stochastic terrorism is. That's the point. It's to silence people. It's to punish them into subservience through words and threats. Anyway.
So here's the thing. And then we'll jump back into our thing. So if you remember, Captain Marvel, right?
Yeah.
Did you know that Captain Marvel she was black?
Oh, Monica Rambeau. So yeah, they switched her over. So
yeah. she started off black, and then through a series of secessions, she ended up who she is today.
Well,
but she started off black.
Well, she was okay. So the story, Captain Marvel, who initially was Marvel, and Marvel and DC got into like this weird litigious thing behind the name because DC had Captain Marvel as well, who was Shazam. And I don't think it was Timely Comics. I think Timely Comics was Marvel beforehand. But anyway, it was a legal battle, and Marvel ended up losing that legal battle for that name. And so they gave the original Captain Marvel cancer and killed him. And there was a whole storyline about his death and all superheroes mourning him. And then there was Mrs. Marvel,
I think that's who that was.
It was Miss Marvel, who was the blonde hair, blue-eyed one. And so what happened with her was they had her, and she was part of the Avengers and everything. And somehow, some way, when they introduced the character Rogue for the X-Men, Rogue absorbed her powers for maintaining contact too long with her. And Rogue took her powers of strength and flight and all that other stuff, but didn't take her energy-based powers. And so she was in a coma for a number of years. They introduced Monica Rambeau as Captain Marvel. And she was the one I grew up with. And then at some point in the 90s, they decided to bring back the blonde hair, blue-eyed Mrs. Marvel. And she was Mrs. Marvel. Monica Rambeau was Captain Marvel. But then they decided, well, she can't be Captain Marvel because black, I guess. I don't know. And they said, now she's Spectrum.
Spectrum?
Yeah, they made her Spectrum. And so that's where she beat Monica. And then it was just, we're just going to call her Monica Rambeau. Okay, fine. So she went from Spectrum to Monica Rambeau to Spectrum to Monica Rambeau, whatever. They brought back the blonde hair, blue-eyed Captain Marvel.
But it wasn't Captain Marvel.
It was Miss Marvel.
Miss Marvel.
But
she got the promotion.
She made her
because of DEI.
Yeah, they
went ahead and promoted her.
She went ahead and said they had a whole arc where she's like, I'm not Miss Marvel, I'm actually Captain Marvel now. And so then they made her Captain Marvel. Yeah. Because it didn't make sense for her to be Miss Marvel when there was no.
So again, Marvel, Captain Marvel started off black.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the one thing that I like about the Green Lantern characters in general, and that's the characters because it's plural, because it's not just one, there's a bunch of them, is that it's not just, he's not just white, he's black. The black one too, on the Justice League or whatever, on the cartoon, it wasn't a white dude. It was his name, Hal Jordan.
It was Hal Jordan's the white dude. There's Kyle Rayner's a white dude. There's John Stewart, who's the black one that I grew up with.
That's the one on the Justice League, right?
That's the one on the Justice League
with the cartoon.
Yep. And then there's Simon Baz now, who's a Muslim, and Jessica Cruz, who's Latina, and yeah, so they've had a lot. And then Guy Garner, who's like a redhead, a white dude.
That's the one that's in the
Superman
one now.
And then there was also Alan Scott, who was the original old school Green Lantern. The reason why that's dope is because, and this is for y'all, this is what this is, and this is actually an issue of race in comic books. So we're gonna get into this because this is what got me.
And again, this is the power of reading. Give it to me.
So what we're talking about are legacy characters. A legacy character is a character where people can inherit the mantle of said character. Like there's more than one Wonder Woman. There's more than one Superman. There's more than one Batman.
Captain America.
There's more than one Captain America. There's more than one Captain Marvel. There's more than one like Flash. There's multiple Flashes and stuff. And so the idea Spider-Man, the idea of the legacy character is they're passing down the mantle of this character. Part of it has to do with the fact that they're trying to keep the rights. They're trying to reserve the rights to that character for a little bit longer, because there's a certain time where a character will cross over into public domain. And so in order to refresh that every once in a while, you move the mantle around and you can say, well, we're utilizing this character, but he's not the primary Green Lantern. So Hal Jordan,
kind of like golf clubs.
Yeah. Or like Mickey Mouse. Like Mickey Mouse there's the element of Steamboat Willie version of Mickey Mouse is in public domain, right? And so they can't have exclusive rights to him. Anybody can utilize him. And so, but that's the concept. And that's one of the main sticking points of race. People were mad about race in comic books because they were mad. There were people who were still kind of mad about Jon Stewart as a Green Lantern. It wasn't even that big of a deal because the Green Lanterns is just a police force. Anybody could be Green Lantern. They're a galactic police force. But people were mad about it. The dope thing about I'm sorry, Fearless, I'm nerding out. One of the dope things about the Green Lantern mythos is for a long time people weren't buying Green Lantern books, so they paired him up with Green Arrow. And Green Lantern and Green Arrow books were kind of in the same vein of Spider-Man books, where they're actually talking about racism and drug use and heavy duty stuff in those comic books. Because Green Arrow is your typical Green Arrow was a leftist, like a hardline leftist. He's always been lefty. Even though he's a billionaire, he didn't like billionaires. Like it was,
kind of like Batman.
Nah, not even like Batman. Batman messed with billionaires to a degree. Green Arrow was really anti-establishment. And so he was the anti-establishment guy. Hal Jordan was the cop, buddy comedy kind of thing. But then they also touch a bunch of social issues and stuff. So anyway, long story short, when we talk about racism in comics, legacy characters is kind of where it started. Marvel, DC, I forgot what this dude's name was in DC. DC got challenged, I think, in the 60s or 70s because they didn't have any major black characters. And so there was one character that this dude created who was supposed to be like a version of the Hulk, who he was a racist, white supremacist dude. And by yelling Black Power, he turned into a superhero black person. It was the craziest work imaginable. Didn't last long. I have no, I forgot what it was, but then there was another one called Tyrock. It was because DC had this really super racist editor and he didn't want to include any black characters, but he got so much pushback. So he made a black character for the Legion of Superheroes, which is supposed to be set far in the far future. And he was a black character called Tyrock. And he had and as a form of protest, the artist made him look ridiculous because they thought it was ridiculous. That's the black character that they wanted to introduce into DC. And he ended up firing one of the artists about it because the artists were like, "This is racist and it's stupid." And why?
Hey, show us a picture.
And so anyway, they had to explain why Tyrock. Where's he been? This is the 31st century, right? Where are all the other black people? And so they made up the editor in chief made up this whole story about how in some century, all the black people went to a pocket dimension to get away from racism. So Tyrock is one of the guys from the pocket dimension coming back to join the Legion Super. It was absolutely ridiculous. But
why would the black people get away from racism if we're not the one that's racist?
That a lot of all right. So I'm gonna show you images of him if I can pull it up. Share this tab instead. All right. Do you see it? Can you see it?
Man, like a little bit.
They gave him. I'm gonna find a better image of it.
Please
A bigger image of it. They made him the artist intentionally made the character look ridiculous because they hated the fact that they. All right, I'll show you. It's hard to find a big image of it because it's an old book, and so the art doesn't necessarily. There it is, right there. All right, that's what they made him look like, and it was a little subtle rebellion against the editor in chief because they're like, okay, since this is a dumb racist character, we're going to make him look stupid as possible, to the point where they don't want to utilize him in anything. That's the way they framed it. But anyway, there's a whole racist backstory that goes along with this character. So I'll read it. A member of 30th Born on Earth, Reality Warp and Screams. He said his home is the racial separate Marzai. They descended from slaves who existed in a dimension only appear on Earth once every few years. He was one of DC's first black characters, and a lot of it was he was created by an absolute a racist man. Anyway, all that to say, talking about comic books apparently was a racist flashpoint for a lot of people. I got death threats behind it, and that's why I stopped writing pretty much everything for a while. Crazy work for you. So let me jump back in. I took us too far afield, so I'll get us back on track, okay? Number 3 is one of the reasons why reading is essential is you learn how to think and not just react to situations.
Okay.
And and the question you should ask are your decisions based on thinking or emotional reflexes? Reading gives you the space between impulse and action. I used to call it, when I was working with my workers, I used to tell them cultivating the pause between an event happening and having a feeling about said event. Because a lot of times we react, or we're addicted to forming an opinion on something that we don't know enough about. And being able to read allows us to process other people's perspective, but then it also disciplines us to process our own. Even reading fiction, where you're actually reading a character's thought process, can impact your thought process.
Yep.
Because you get a chance to see the internal monologue. Because here's the thing, not everybody has an internal monologue. I don't think people know that.
I met somebody like that, yeah.
And so it allows us to see how other people process information before they react to it. Because one of the things authors have to do is sometimes you have to explain why a character is taking a certain action. And so you have to go into their brain a little bit to see how they think. There's a lot of people who don't normally do that. They just react to things that happen in front of them. The entire crash outs about the events last week were really good examples. People getting fired for saying, hey, this guy's kind of racist. Oh, you're fired. You're out of here. We're done. That's an impulsive reaction. Or they're planning on firing this person anyway. They just found an excuse to do it. Either way. But learning to think without reacting is a skill that you have to develop. Which is weird to say to adults, but there's a lot of adults who do not think before they act. They just do. And sometimes that's good. sometimes if you're playing a sport or if you are in an emergency situation, you need to be able to react without thinking. But the thing is, you spend so much time thinking about how you're going to react that the reaction is automatic. Does that make sense? Um, when working group homes, I used to have suicidal kids or self-harming situations where a kid was in danger. I had to be able to act without having to think about it. I had to know what I needed to do immediately. But there was a lot of thinking that went in before the emergency situation happened so that I could flow out on autopilot. A lot of my staff didn't have that ability, especially if they were newer. They didn't know how to not react to a situation.
Right.
So reading allows you to create that distance between outside stimuli and your emotional environment internally. And it's an important development skill that you need. And a lot of people don't have it. Uh, you want me to keep going? Because I'm on I can do number 4 if we're ready. Or do you have anything to say about 3?
I mean, well, this kind of like with the example that we gave is that Stoics and philosophers, even CEOs, all read to slow down the reaction time.
Yep.
And the kind of crappy thing about today's time is that everything that we do is sped up. From the videos that we watch is anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes. Everything is just real quick, fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of slow down reaction time. Somebody says something and they talk real fast, and because they talk fast, you think they're right.
Right.
It's like, no. Like, the reason why they talk fast is because if you start picking apart what they're talking about, they're going to start losing ground with you.
Right.
And especially the people that are listening to this, I've seen Charlie Kirk do that several times.
Oh, yeah.
Where once you start getting in his ass on his supposed facts, he moves to the next thing. It's like, no. Let me bring you back to what you just said. It's like, no, we're already done with that. No, you lied.
Right.
So, no, like you're being dishonest. So again, it's either arrogance, ignorance, or avoidance.
Well, and it's also because what the parlance or whatever they came up with in pop culture terminology is called the Gish Gallop. Gish Gallop is where you trot out, where you shotgun blast somebody with a whole bunch of points. A lot of them can be really dubious in nature. You just railroad them with a bunch of assertions, and then you let them try to sift through them and answer one each individually.
Right.
And that was Charlie Kirk's thing. It would be rapid fire points that may have all been in bad faith, but since they came out so fast, you can't fact check them individually. And so when he encountered people that were skilled in rhetoric,
yeah, but
he couldn't deal. Like, they show all the highlights of him just running over 22-year-olds who aren't really formalized, who don't have any background in debate, right? But when he runs into somebody who actually had some kind of background, when they're able to pin him down to a point,
he can do that shit,
or they control their own mic, so he couldn't mute their mic,
right,
and they could continue to talk. After he decided to move on, he wasn't good at that. And
not at all.
And that's not even debate. That's just arguing. Like,
and then that's my point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were we talking about that last week?
Yeah.
That's my point. A lot of what we call debates, they're not debates. A debate is something that as soon as you say it, I can go look that up. They're arguing.
Yeah.
That's not even fucking discourse.
Right.
Motherfucker, what are you talking about?
And I think that's what people think debate is. People think debate is, I say a bunch of stuff that you can't prove, and then I dance on you when you stumble and trip over a word.
Right.
And debate is, you say something, I listen to what you say, I'll take my notes, and then I come up with a rebuttal. And then you get to rebut my rebuttal.
right? But I usually still have facts
Yeah,
in front of me. So it's not like I'm sitting there just talking as to be talking.
right. And
You know, I have facts here
right.
with sources of where they came from.
And I think that's what happens with a lot of people because they think, they see the Shapiro or the Charlie Kirk debating with the people, and that turns into it's just they're embarrassing people that they don't like. They're embarrassing people with different viewpoints.
Hold on one second. Liberty Twitcher just said, but what if those facts are upsetting? Should we still use them? I mean, I don't see why you couldn't.
Huh?
Like I don't see why you couldn't at all. Like the one thing as a black man myself, I understand where certain parts of my community is a miss. I get it. Right? I could talk about that myself all day long. I can also talk about what we've done to actually try to rectify those situations as well. And also the drawback that we've gotten from it. But if all you're doing is talking about one litigious fact, but you're not following it up with anything else,
Mm-hmm.
then it leads the person to believe that that this is just a problem and nobody's trying to deal with it.
Right.
So if we're talking about guns, for instance, I mean nobody wants to see people get shot. I mean, obviously, right? But yet instead, we still keep having this argument about, well, it's my Second Amendment to have them. Nobody, motherfucker, that's like saying that McDonald's or Burger King, it's fucking horribly bad for you. We all know that. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
But if Burger King and McDonald's were killing people at the same rate as gun violence was, you would think we would probably do something about that.
Well,
But the fact that we don't give a fuck, that's the part that's unsettling to me.
and one thing,
But hold on one second.
yeah.
But Liberty, if you said something, I would totally understand where you were coming from. Hold on. So, for example, okay, so here's another cool thing. Liberty Twitcher, how about this? Look up to see how many out of all those groups, which one is most exonerated? Out of all the groups you just said, which group is most exonerated than all the other ones as well? That's what I'm talking about. What with our information.
Well,
And then not only that, but if you look at the DOJ's Department of Prisons, excuse me,
yeah.
there's white people. White people are the vast majority of the people in prison. Second would be black, which is still pretty shitty. But we're also still the most exonerated, which usually means that we're faster to be prosecuted, we're faster to be arrested and prosecuted, but we're also the one group that usually gets thrown. That's usually what's the word? Exonerated. Excuse me. I
Yeah.
keep bringing that up to prove that we never committed the crime in the first place.
And I'm gonna make an assumption that we're actually like this is actually in good faith. Like I'm gonna pretend like this is in good faith because
And I hope that is.
yeah, I'm pretending
Because again, bro, like I'm not on no Charlie Kirk type shit.
yeah.
By
So
no means. I'm just that part. Matter of fact.
so
Hey,
so let me add a little bit of context here.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll be
So
right back.
all right, understand that you're talking to somebody. I've my entire life before I started all this, I was working in juvenile justice. I've sat on multiple crime commissions. I've actually been in the room when we're getting federal crime statistics or whatnot. And one of the things is you have to be really careful of is when you are pulling data out of context. When data is being pulled from one source to another, and there's no context around it, and comes from data scientists, so you can look. When we're pulling data out of context, data can literally say anything, especially when it's pulled out as isolated, like an isolated line, like 13% of this or this X many times. Like when you're pulling it out of context without any other framing around it, it can sound different than what the actual intent is. And so, okay, so how do we debate when one side pulls out statistics like that? That's what I'm saying. We need to actually give, like, at that point, if we're gonna, and I think that's where we take a pause in the debate. We take a pause in the debate and actually build context around the data points that you're actually pulling out. Because when one side actually starts doing that, it's imperative that, especially if you're in a public forum, you understand and you discuss how data is actually utilized in a debating context. There's syntax to data. Data points have syntax as well. Numbers have syntax as well as language and stuff like that. And so when we pull data points, extrapolate them out of context out of relation to other data points, you can go down some very slippery slopes. And then we have to ask what the intent of the data point is. Why are we discussing the data point in the first place? And so there's a lot that goes into it once we start getting into data analysis. And to be quite honest with you, most Americans would probably fail a basic statistics course. We're not very good at parsing data. And I'm saying that as somebody whose job used to be to parse data. We're not very good at it. And so I'd be very careful pulling out data points when you're talking to somebody who's not really good, with the assumption that most people don't understand how to parse it. I would be very careful about introducing data points into the conversation. That I would ask why. What is the function of the data, introducing the data point?
And then not only that though, but I'm looking at blacks aged 10 to 24 or likely.
Well, hold on 1 second, Fearless, because I was gonna say that next real quick, and then I can let you go. If we're pulling out the data points, this is the context I was gonna add, and I wanted to throw this in here. When we're talking about numbers of shootings and crime stats and all this other stuff, 13% or blah blah blah. We're also talking about a percentage of Black people, because a lot of times people that commit crimes don't commit them in isolation. They commit them in clusters, right? And a lot of times the people that commit the crimes are the same people. So let's talk about, because what happens is when we start talking these data points, we start saying that a good chunk of this specific population is inherently criminal. The data doesn't back that up. You're talking about a very, very small percent of the total population of Black people. Even if you took the collective, all the crimes, and compared it against the total population of Black people in the country, you're still talking about a very small percentage of specific Black people, especially if you filter out, we just isolate it to the people that are committing the crimes on a repeated cycle. So when we start saying these big, huge numbers, on the surface level, it looks like there is this huge crime wave happening in this specific segment. But what we're really looking at is a few individuals that are committing crimes on a repeated cycle. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. And so we may be talking about, it may be, you may be saying, 13%, but then really when you start parsing it down and drilling down, you may be talking about 1% of the total population.
I mean, right, because
or even less than 1%.
If there's 55,
yeah, see, we're not doing. I have a feeling that this is not a good faith argument, and the reason why I'm saying that is
53% of
okay.
Here's the problem, but the problem with that statistic is that majority of robberies and all that stuff is never actually entered in there.
Yeah,
they don't actually talk about everything as a whole.
We're talking about index crimes and stuff.
They're talking about just with one particular subgroup. If there's 55 million Black people in here in America, let's say, if you're talking about a percentage of a percentage of a percentage,
Mhm.
but there's more white people, technically you would have more white people in prison than you would with that as well, right? But again, like you just said, we account for 53% of homicide offenders and committed robberies. But again, we're also the most exonerated
Right.
as well. See, that's the point that you're not putting in to those statistics.
Because
I
we're talking
just,
about arrests. We're talking about
we're
arrests. And
talking,
arrests don't always mean what happens when somebody's proven in court.
correct. So I just read this book, The Reformatory. This is a fictional book based in the 1950s Jim Crow. Now, according to certain people, basically Jim Crow is something that 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 they didn't do.
Mhm.
Technically, Jim Crow doesn't exist. We were just making it up, right?
Right.
Um, no, and so here's what I do. Here's what I do. There's a guy. I don't know if you know of a guy by the name of Dr. Claude Anderson. Dr. Claude Anderson talked about. He said something I always remember, and even when I'm talking to certain people about certain things, I think about this constantly. He said, in regards to reparations, he said, as soon as you start talking about race, the conversation's over. As soon as you bring up race, the conversation's over. Because what's the argument to that? I didn't enslave you. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Which they would be right every single time. So instead, I don't ever talk about race. Ever. You know what I would talk about instead? The same thing Dr. Claude Anderson said. You talk about the system and the financial exploitation. That's what you talk about. I don't ever bring up race when I talk about that. And when people try to say that, well, the Jewish people didn't get reparations. Yes, they did. Their government, man, their government was one of the biggest supporters of Israel, of them having their own country, that they supported to that.
So
Yeah, correct. Correct. So correct.
I'll put that on the screen. So I do want to answer one point here. So that's why this debate is so difficult. When they use facts like that, it ruins the debate. Here's what I'll say to that. I'm pulling up. I'm putting the quotes on the screen as they come in. So here's the thing I will say to that. Out of context statistics aren't facts. They're out of context statistics. You have to provide a framework of context around the statistics before they become factual.
I mean, matter of fact, that would be almost like saying that 90% of cannibals are white.
Right.
That's a fucking fact. That's factual. If you look up in our history of cannibalisms, kidnappings, murders, all that, most white people do that. So if I were to take this whole thing, all of them together, and I were to say, well, 60% of cannibals in America are white. Do you see how I just did that?
Mhm.
I just grouped everybody
Yeah.
into that one thing. Now, are 60% of white people cannibals? Fuck, I mean, I don't know. I would hope not.
Right.
But that's
They're
how
not.
easy
Yeah.
I can play with those numbers.
Well, and then it also goes to the fact, like, so we introduce these these out of context statistics into the conversation, right? So
And
fear,
one second.
yeah,
It's not even really about it's having white people transfer shit. I'm not having white people do shit.
yeah,
It is our government that owes that. White people don't owe shit. They owe that. Just like in Germany, the Germans didn't. The Germans as a whole individually didn't pay the Jews. the German government paid them, but the government is refusing it. Of course.
Well, and so it ends up becoming like I said, I use the phrase a lot: snake eating its own tail.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
one of the things I will say is a lot of times when we start talking these statistics and asking individuals to answer for statistical stuff.
No.
What happens is, so example, case in point, Fearless and I are fathers, right? We're Black fathers. Our kids are with us and whatnot. I'm not involved. We're not involved in any criminal enterprises. We're not out in the streets from doing any of this stuff. But you're asking us to control the actions of people who are strangers to us, like like you said with white cannibals, right? Like when we say a specific people, all the people who commit cannibalism are of this group. Okay, so what am I supposed to do about that thing?
Right. That's like having them answer.
Yeah.
For like Jeffrey Dahmer and what's his name, Albert Fisher.
Yeah.
Answer for cannibalistic crimes, and then having ordinary white people answer for that.
Yeah, and so
then it got shit to do with them.
And it's not necessarily an answer to inequity, like like say.
Oh, hey, hold on. One more thing. 100% of the people that financially ruined this country were white. 100% of them were white. So I can literally tell white people, y'all destroyed this fucking country. Fucking fact.
Yeah.
You financially. So hold on. So under the DEI argument, you motherfuckers shouldn't be in office. You shouldn't be dealing with money. Alaska, the fucking state of Alaska won't even give the government money. It gives it to the people because the government is so fucking horrible with fucking money. These motherfuckers lost $2 trillion fucking dollars right before 9/11 happened. Do you realize how much money $2 trillion fucking dollars is?
Yeah.
Do you listen to me? $1 million is here. $1 billion is here. $8 trillion is from here to across the fucking street. That's how big that difference is. They lost $2 trillion. And they're like, we don't know where it is. Charlie Kirk said something that I 100% agree with. We should bring back public executions. When you steal from this fucking country, no matter who you, especially if we elected you, we should put you on the White House lawn and shoot you in the back of the fucking head. So I 100% agree with them because that is theft and it is treason. Case closed. But he never argued that, though. He never argued that. I'm the wrong one to argue this shit with.
So what I will say is to kind of put a bow on it. A lot of times we have to, when we're debating, we have to determine, one, if we're in the position to debate this in good faith from our standpoint, or are we too close to the actual debate? Two, if the person initiating the debate is actually doing this in good faith, what is the purpose of the debate? Is this fact seeking or is this accusation seeking? Are we looking to advance our knowledge or further our knowledge or expand what our belief system is? Or are we looking to win? Those are two different frameworks we need to operate off of. And once we're able to identify that, we're able to determine what the purpose of this debate is, and then we could determine what the ground rules are. And I think what happens is initially when the debate, when somebody starts talking about we're going to debate X, Y, and Z, there was never any conversation about what the purpose of this debate is. Is one side trying to win? It's just like when I had cases um, working with public defenders and attorneys and stuff like that. Um, well, and I think we have to define what a fact is. I think, bro, we have to actually, because it says the other side's trying to use facts in their favor. We have to define what a fact is, and we have to define what actually constitutes as a fact. Because
just like with the word racism, you have to define that first.
Because
before you can use it.
Because if a statistic, if you give me a one-line statistic, and it can be proven with like the rest of that statistic, then that statistic is not a fact. So if you give me an out of context statistic, but then we provide the rest of that out of context statistic and put it in context, and it disproves what you said, you're not dealing in fact. You're throwing numbers at people. And right. So I think we have to, and I think that's kind of the sign of that bad faith debate, because now we're doing it to win. One of the things I remember very clearly, this was when I was doing case management, and we had a public defender and the county attorney sitting there talking to us. And I think there was another lawyer in the room who was kind of a private attorney. And one of the things that stuck with me is their entire thing was, when we're talking about a court case, something that happens in court, it's not about who is telling the truth. The standard is not truth. The standard is what people believe. It's what you can prove or what you can convince people that happened. And so one of the attorneys said, listen, if I have a case where a child was abused by an adult and that child's 5 years old, if you allow me to put that child under a cross-examination and it's going to get my client off, then that 5-year-old's going under a cross-examination. Don't put your clients in that position, basically, more or less. Because it doesn't matter to that attorney if their client did the thing or not. It matters if they can convince the judge or the jury. It doesn't matter if it's true. It's about winning. And so when we engage in debate, are we engaging to seek truth? Are we engaging to broaden perspective? Or are we engaging to win the debate? These are not the same things, and they're not the same intentions, the same purposes. And so we have to establish that out the gate.
So what you're saying is that what's our objective doing this? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like homeboy it's sitting there telling people like, I'm here to give you the truth. But the truth according to who? You see what I'm saying? Whose truth are we talking about? Because your truth may not be the same as my truth. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So I like how you said that. What's our objective in discussing this? Mm-hmm. Why are we discussing this? Why is this so important? If Jesus and people are like, he was a man of faith, he was a man of this. What? I don't believe Jesus never once said any of the shit. First and foremost, let me rephrase that. We don't know what Jesus said because Jesus never wrote anything down. Mm-hmm. That's a fact. Fact. Like, we don't know what Jesus said. It was said that Jesus said that to be cool to your neighbors, to love people, to be good to them. That was it. Mm-hmm. And what warped society is this being good to people. And the fact of the matter is that white nationalism and thinking that God is, the problem is that they think that the Bible is white. And when you look at it from that standpoint, of course you would think that, right? I mean, because the law is yours, this is yours. But the problem is what happens when people just say, you know what, I'm sick of you. Mm-hmm. I'm sick of your bullshit, and we're not fucking with you no more. And then what happens, right? Mm-hmm. So, again, this whole thing, people kept thinking it was a left person that did this trans black whatever. But what happens when your own base is knocking you off?
Well, there's a whole frame of nuance. We'll talk about that off stream. I want to tell
That
you about
part.
that.
Okay.
Here's the thing. So we're talking about like the Asian, the model, the Asian thing and stuff like that. And it's not necessarily my place to say it because I'm a black American, like, right. But I'll try to put a little bit of a spin on this, and then me and Fearless got to get to the rest of our thing because I got to be out of here I got a 12:30.
Yeah, I got you. I got you.
And so, um, one of the things that happens specifically when we talk about um, marginalized groups, right? What happens invariably when there's a marginalized group, there's always one that becomes the model minority, the one that is set up to be the example that is held up against other groups that exist within that society to say, well, why can't you be more like them? And unfortunately, for a lot of people that came from Japan and Korea and stuff like that, they ended up falling into that model minority myth. Now, we do ignore the fact that there is a level of subjugation, like being a Korean in China is dangerous. Like, it's dangerous to be a Korean in China. And there's a lot of other interplay within that subsect that we just say as Asians, which isn't necessarily accurate, but we'll say that it is. In that subsect, there's also nationalism that ties to that too. And so what happened is a lot of the Asian migrants that came over or had been in the United States um, around the 50s and 60s and 70s, even the 80s, were kind of propped up as the model minority. And a lot of Asians that came from countries that weren't necessarily seen in high regard from the US, that's also from that area, they were brought over and they were almost treated in a second class way. And so it was harmful to those other communities when this population from these specific countries over in what we call Asia, the total of Asia, when these specific populations come over, we're talking about Vietnamese, we're talking about Laos, we're talking about Cambodia, we're talking about Thailand, we're talking about Philippines and stuff. They didn't fall into them. They don't fall under the model minority thing. There's only specific Asians that fall under that, according to how the government had phrased it. And so, yeah, that's what happened. And so, yeah, that level of representation, it actually does hurt other Asian folks, other Asian groups that don't fit into the groups that get the model minority treatment. And now we're at a point where the backlash against the model minority is palpable too, because they're getting hurt by it too. They're getting squeezed by it too. But they got gassed up. A certain segment of Asian folks got gassed up thinking that if we push and get rid of affirmative action in these colleges, our numbers are going to go up. Well, their numbers are going down. And from a black standpoint, our numbers stayed relatively the same at some of these Ivy League schools. So we weren't harmed by the action that was meant to harm us. And it was a lot of people who believed the myth of the model minority, or the fact that they were the model minority, who believed that. A lot of them who believed and invested in that are the ones that ended up cutting off their nose to spite their face. They hurt themselves.
So their objective was to keep their head down and just build.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, well, this ain't our fight, so we're staying out of it. This is between y'all. We ain't want nothing to do with it.
But I
just want to build our stuff up. And on one hand, that's fine. On the other hand, like you just said, they cut their nose off despite their face. Because go ahead.
And I'll let you finish your point, but I want to answer this real quick. I think the thing is, when we use the bag Asians, what we're talking about is because they're dark-skinned Asians that don't get the same treatments.
Not at all.
They don't get the same benefit of the doubt.
Not at all. Like Koreans?
Yeah.
Shit.
They don't get the same access. That's what I'm saying.
No.
Vietnamese, Cambodian, people from Laos.
Yo, not at all.
They're the dark-skinned Asians.
Not at all.
And so they
not
face,
at all.
There's colorism that they're going to face domestically and internationally. If you're from Cambodia or Laos, you go to Japan, they're going to treat you And so,
Listen
and
to
so
me. If Jay Shetty was a few, he got real beautiful eyes though, so he probably okay.
yeah.
But if his eyes were brown and he was a couple hues darker, shit.
And so affirmative action wasn't meant to help Asians, but they plain was harming them. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. They started what was it? You start smelling, you start smelling yourself, right? Like they start smelling themselves because of that model minority myth, not understanding that it's still a myth that was still meant to hurt them. They just didn't understand how it was being used to hurt them and marginalize them. And so they railed against the thing that was allowing them to gain access to these places in the first place. But the a darker skinned person from that region of the world, from one of these countries that's not one of the model minority countries, they don't get any of that benefit. They never got any of that benefit. I used to work with families that were Karen, and they were basically escaping a lot of stuff that was going on. I believe it was in Malaysia or whatnot. If I'm not mistaken, you can correct me, but they were escaping a genocide, right? And they did they all are like situated in and around North Omaha. And so because that's where they got put, and so they don't fall under that model minority. They don't have access to a lot of the model minority stuff, right? Even the stereotypes that go along with the model minority, because some of them are my shade and they don't get that benefit of the doubt. And so I think they hurt themselves by trying to remove affirmative action because they thought it was benefiting Black people disproportionately. And in the fact, the people that were being benefited disproportionately were white women and some Asian folks. And here's the other side, because when we talk about DEI initiatives, a DEI initiative is also hiring veterans. That's a DEI initiative. Hiring veterans is a DEI initiative. So when we apply these labels, they're very imprecise about what they actually do.
No. They're very precise on exactly who they're talking to.
Yeah.
Like no, they may not be. It's a very broad stroke, but it's very laser target.
Oh yeah, we know
laser targeting.
We know who they're talking to.
Right, just like up here when you talked about affirmative action. Did you know? So whether people know it or not, affirmative action technically started in around 1865, 1866, around there. Do you know what happened at that time? At 1865?
Oh, it was Reconstruction. It was kind of in that.
Yeah, that's when Black people were set free. Mm-hmm. So we became instead of being assets, we became liabilities. Well, if you also remember, we were the ones that built everything. So we knew how to do everything. So when you let us go, we're going to go out and go take our skill and our labor and everything else to the highest bidder. Not many people knew how to work like we did, or who would work for less like we would. So they created affirmative action then for out of work white people so that they would band together and help each other get work. Because why hire you if I can hire the Negro that down the street for damn near a little bit of nothing? So that's what affirmative action. That's how it started. I got a book called When Affirmative Action Was White. And it lays that whole thing out. Yeah. So it's funny how during the 60s, damn near 100 years later, they're like, well, we want to give you guys affirmative action. Affirmative action was never for us. It was always for them. Just like government housing wasn't initially for us.
Oh no!
It was for them.
Oh no! We were actually literally legislated out of government housing, and a lot of we were legislated out of that government housing and access to it. And the only reason they opened access to it was so that they can kind of port people out of government housing and shuffle a new population of people into it, and then they let the government housing deteriorate and fall down around our ears. And so,
Oh yeah, I mean, look at what you said. No, you're right, and it doesn't. Yes, no, like no, that happens because we were paying taxes even during Reconstruction, even during Jim Crow, and all that to the United States government, who basically shit on us and let these people lynch and murder us while we paid their fucking taxes to do it.
yeah, even if it's not, even we're not even talking about slavery. We're talking about taxation
Yeah.
without representation
Yes.
for almost 100 years, because a lot of the voting laws weren't even the voting laws that were on the books weren't being enforced for us, and so we are being taxed without being represented in the federal government. And so
I mean, same way that the undocumented Mexicans are paying into our stuff right now, and they don't get benefit for that either.
yeah, it's racist on
today. Just saying.
Well, and I think that the idea of merit, like when we start talking about merit, like that's kind of a dubious point, because we have this generalization idea of what merit is, but merit is also determined. What is meritocracy? Well, meritocracy is kind of determined by whoever the ruling class is. They get to determine what the merits are. And so they get to determine the standards that they're going to apply to any specific framework to gain access. Well, if only the ruling class gets to determine what merits they're looking for, then is it really based on the worth of a person, the value of a person? You know what I'm saying? A lot of times, and I've done corporate America, I've been in corporate America. A lot of times a merit for a person in charge is, does this person follow my orders without asking any questions? It doesn't matter if they're smart or not. It doesn't matter about whether they know what they're doing or not. It's, does this person follow instructions? Do they do what I ask them to do when I ask them to do it? Because here's the thing. When we talk about, let's bring up something very recent, something that I'm actually been fascinated with. The entire Ocean Gate thing with the submersible, where the dude went down and tricked them rich people into getting into a submersible that he was controlling with a video game controller he bought from Radio Shack. The merit in order to work for him was, don't question me. Don't ask me any questions. If you didn't ask him any questions, you were considered an excellent employee there, because that was the merit. That's what determined whether you were a good employee or not. If you didn't ask that man a single question about what he was doing. Hey, man, should we not, like, all the experts are saying that we shouldn't use carbon fiber for this thing because carbon fiber is porous and it doesn't really stand up under the increased water pressure. Hey, fire him. He's a bad employee. He doesn't meet the merits that we hold for this company. So meritocracy could be a very dubious thing, because sometimes the best person for the job isn't the most qualified person.
Right. That's what's called a kakistocracy.
Yes. And so that's kind of what and so I think that's one of the dangers of when we start talking about meritocracy, because, I mean, even without getting that bleak, sometimes you hire somebody because they're a good fit for the team. Not because they're the individual best at the job, because you could bring in somebody who's excellent at the job, but if they're a complete asshole and destroy team unity and team cohesion, you can't work with them because they're going to destroy your team. I own a basketball training business too, in addition to my marketing business. Sometimes this great player isn't so great because they can't play with the team. Their skills are amazing. They're a terrible teammate.
Oh, really?
And so the merit, the merit that I'm using to apply, are they a good teammate, doesn't always align with how skilled they are as a player. And so we just got to be careful of that. I see you got comments here. I got my glasses off, so let me. Good point. Just because a student has better grades doesn't mean their merit for society is better. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of A students who are also terrible people, or are absolute blithering fucking idiots. And so we can't just apply one standard. You have to look at everything in context. And I think maybe that's the overarching theme of what we're trying to say with all of this. Context matters. Context can make an argument bulletproof, but it can also destroy an argument. And if adding context in destroys your argument, then you don't have an argument worth discussing. Good point. But should we continue to allow the NBA to choose players based on? Well, here's the thing: the NBA and I Fearless. I know I'm coming across as Bryon Hill, expert of everything, right? I'm really not trying to do that, but I know a lot of NBA scouts. They will say this person is a fantastic player. They have a high basketball. They have a high basketball IQ, or they're a bad teammate, or they're a fantastic, highly skilled player, but they got no basketball IQ. So skill wise, they're better than everybody else, but we can't put them on the floor. We can't do anything. Or they have a skill set that we're not utilizing anymore. There's a lot of players that fall into that. And so they end up having to go play overseas because they're fantastic players. They would be amazing NBA players. They would, but they're not, it's not their role. Draymond Green actually talked about this. He basically said, he's like, when you're building an NBA team, there's one or two, excuse my language, but it's like, when you're building an NBA team, there's one or two motherfuckers that can do whatever they want to because they're the stars, and everybody else has to play your role. And so if you can't play a role and you're not star level player, you ain't making it no matter how good you are. There's a lot of guys in the NBA who are good at, who are excellent at one or two things, or they could be the star, but they're just not. And they know how to play their role very well.
Like Scottie Pippen.
Yeah, Scottie Pippen. Pip, when he got on his own, Pip was still an amazing player, but he wasn't like he allowed Jordan, he set this table for Jordan to do what Jordan does, right? And without a table setter, Jordan struggled. But without somebody to dine off the meal that he laid out, Scottie Pippen struggled too. So it's a give and kind of take thing. The merit system within the NBA is based mostly on, is this person a good fit for the team? Most of those guys who get drafted in there, you're playing a role. And so now we're talking about the top 1% of the 1% of the 1% who actually get that starring role.
Yeah.
And you may have played, because as you get near the top, that layer, that difference between talent narrows out to where it's almost microscopic. And so now you have to look at other variables. All right, sorry I dominated that piece of it.
No, I love it. I wrote down some notes on some stuff that you said, so I loved it.
So, all right, y'all. Thanks for jumping in, Liberty Twitcher. We hope to see you in the future, man.
Every Tuesday
we're here. We got to get to getting. And Fearless, I want to chop it up with you real quick, Al.
Okay.
So thanks for tuning in. It's been Bryon and Fearless with the Trial and Error podcast. We'll talk to you guys next week. Be easy, and I think is it in stream now? Yeah. All right.